Welcome, everyone. My name is Justin Larson, and I'm here with my dear friend Chelan. And today we are embarking on kind of a new journey into some uncharted waters for ourselves with a podcast project. We're calling it Souls Wide Open, and today's our first episode. And we're going to talk about how we can show up messy and miserable, and how the power of that truth is so important over the facade of pretending it's not there, and how flowing through that is such an important thing. And we thought that we would start with this episode mostly because this project is already messy and we are stumbling as we fall into it. And yet we both have been through very messy and at times even miserable moments, and see the importance of flowing through those and not resisting them. So that's what we're going to talk about today in more depth. So I'd love for Chelan to pop on and say hello. And I think we're even going to start out with some of the mess we're even going through right now in life.
Awesome. Yep. Oh, yeah. Well, it's so fun to have a platform, right, Justin, where we get to just be in charge of like creating the values. And like, because in my life, I always feel just a million times more comfortable, empowered, free, and connected when I'm in a space that allows this type of sharing, where there's just a kind of more explicit permission to go there. And yeah, so it's really fun to claim that. And yeah, and yeah, to normalize it. So and to demonstrate that we can be. We'll talk about this more later, but I think often we think of being in a messy place as that being totally, or talking about our mess as being totally contrasting from being also just kind of empowered and happy and okay. But really, that when we can talk about these things, they stop being obstacles to us, like you said, just flowing and moving forward with our circumstances. And
yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, so we thought it would be fun to get a little personal and even maybe vulnerable and share some messes that we're currently experiencing. And for me right now, actually, one of the most potent things is that I have it's not terrible, but I have not great internet service because I live in the boonies and I only have satellite. And that bums me out so much because I want to have a clear image and audio, but I just can't, or I just don't at this moment. And that's okay, but it's one of those things that has been kind of running through my mind in terms of this project. Gosh darn it, I wish this could be clearer. And then also I'm in just the throes of spring on a farm as a single person, kind of handling a lot, and I'm so overwhelmed by it, but moving through it in the best way I can as a first-time farmer. I don't know what I'm doing, and yet I'm going for it, and I'm claiming it, making it happen. Gosh, I don't know. Okay, this is the problem with this, Chelan, is opening up to all the mess. I could talk for a long time.
There's so much material here. There really is.
Yeah.
Should I just take the talking stick?
Yes, please.
And then, okay, well, this is so funny. I feel like part of my immediate sort of mess thing right now is just my hard time getting my appearance together for these freaking videos. And we were just laughing about this sort of random little floral tropical kimono that I'm in. And it's laundry day, when is it not, with kids, and this showed up in the mail today, and I was like, damn, I'm gonna try to wear this funky kimono, but it feels kind of awkward on me. I don't feel like it really represents me. And then I couldn't find my a hairbrush, and so this is just sort of part of my thing. And I kind of like it at the same time. It just sort of it's a physical representation of just the real kind of humble, silly mess of life, not being able to find my freaking hairbrush and things like that. But then also, in brief, just all kinds of really hard, messy relational ambiguities going on for me right now. That's super tough. And then another thing, for those who I haven't met who are watching this, so I'm a poet. I share mystical poetry, and I do it a lot. And then sometimes publicly on Facebook, and then now and then my poems, there's like somebody misunderstands them or misinterprets them, and it can throw me into such a big insecurity thing of like, yeah, being misunderstood, not properly represented. And so I've been really in that recently. And I feel so good, so relieving and liberating to just talk about that challenge.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing that we're going to just dive into so much more is that we haven't let those things stop us from continuing through what it is that we're pursuing, and how that's kind of what the gem of today is about, is like this mess and the potential misery that comes along with it is part of the process and shouldn't stop us from like engaging in the things that we're so deeply in love with. And this podcast, this project we're doing, like we could definitely let a lot of that mess slow us down or completely, stop it, but we're not. We're here. So
we're bringing it in.
Yeah, that's right. So we will have Chelan kind of like take us into this with a poem, but before we do that, just to kind of give everybody a little synopsis of the next couple episodes. So like we said, we've decided to commit to 6 episodes. We want to just try out this like fun little series we're doing. So the next one we're going to talk about is all about like what is love and kind of redefining love, normalizing the disgust, hatred, insecurity, shames, etc., all of that often shows up when we're on our path to true intimacy and heart, like what the real truth of love is and how it conflicts with so much of what we actually think of love, being a part of. So then the third one is honoring and exonerating anger as an entryway into self-understanding, which is going to be so juicy. The fourth is relational fragility and relational resilience, moving beyond people pleasing and fear of conflict. And then we'll have our fifth as embracing a holistic spiritual path, spirituality that supports the true evolution of the whole self rather than ideological constructs. And then the sixth, which I think is going to really just sum things up, is pursuing the big dream and how to do that. So yeah, so Chelan, I guess now is when you read your poem and get us in all the good feels of today.
Yes, and our list is so cool of episodes, and I just wanted to just add that we're not speaking here as experts. Like we're not trying to put forth any kind of thing like that. We're exploring. We've done a lot of exploration though of these subjects and so it's not like we're not speaking from conceptual theories about these things. We're speaking like in a very open way about our lived experiences and learnings.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, they always say the best teachers are only a few steps ahead. So maybe that's where we're at.
Cool. So this poem touches on the mess, and it kind of really honors it. And it talks about, in my intuitive feeling, that there's this real kind of energy that is inspiring people toward going in to look for kind of a more satisfying experience with inner truth. And there's no way for that journey to not have a messy component to it. And so it's kind of celebrating the sacred element of being willing to fall into that mess. And in this poem, this embodied process, I use the term, I call it the feminine, and that's one way to think of it. But just so you know, that's what I mean. I just mean this process of going in rather than living in abstract concepts. Okay. The feminine is here to crack open your body, women and men and all, and finally release the poison of every ancient uncleaned wound. The feminine is here to crack open your old ideologies and shoot new life through you, like a seed hard and closed for so many years and suddenly kissed into transformation by the great destruction of light. The feminine is here to pull you from the measured, surveyed land at the edge of the wild forest of your dreams and finally toss you into the mapless territory of your heart. The feminine is here to lay your impressive certificates of learning at the feet of inner knowing, to pluck you from the discipleship of an outward master and lay you at the altar of your inner truth. The feminine is here to remind you that God can live in the earth, in the hips, in the deepest shadows, that she is planted like a wild rose in the darkest furrows of your pain to teach you, to reteach you, to mother your frailties rather than dominate them, and bring the wound from exile into embrace. The feminine is here to tell us in no uncertain terms, we are carrying new wisdom, a gestation of God in the womb of our consciousness, and a great never before seen beauty is soon due to be born.
I love it. Thank you. So good.
Yeah.
The use of feminine reminds me of the importance of like creativity and how we need to have a balance of the creative feminine mess. Like it's so messy to be in creativity, and there's a feminine aspect of creation, and the masculine is so much more structured and clean and like put together in the maintenance of like doing the dishes after you've created the meal, but like doing but creating the meal is such a like important like messy process to get into. And so I love that. So actually that the feminine just resonated so much, I think, there.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Yeah, do you want to dive in? You go first, I guess. Tag you're it.
Yeah, I'll start. So this is our first episode, so we might be kind of working out the kinks a little bit. And we've got this list of bullet points. So I'm just going to go ahead and refer to that. So we were talking, Justin, and let's just kind of go back and forth on this, like about how I don't feel like there are that many experiences that I have about somebody sharing about their struggles or their mess or what they're going through in kind of a way that feels that they're not like really super identified with it, and that feels sort of like coming from a place where they're sort of spinning their wheels in it.
Yeah.
I see a lot of like avoidance of mess behavior and a lot of like spinning the wheels in mess and sharing in a way that doesn't really move people through or beyond it.
Right. Like there's either this filter of it not existing. So we really present ourselves in that like everything's fine, I've got this, so that we can actually kind of project to the world that like we are capable and that this is going to be okay. So it's kind of this denial or pretend state. Or you're right. Then there's also the moments when there's so much mess, but we want other people to almost rescue us from it. So we're like, this is also horrible. I can't. And I guess we did kind of define that as maybe even like being a victim to the mess versus then the third thing, which we're both, I think, finally aware of, is this like just truthful embrace of the mess.
Yeah, truthful embrace of the mess and sharing as a way of, because when things are held in like shamed secrecy, they can just stay stuck in us. So like harvesting these things to bring it forth to the light, to be able to disidentify with it and then integrate it and move beyond it.
Yeah, and how blocked we are from whatever path it is that we're choosing to walk along when we're in denial of any part, whether it be like the abundance and the really wonderful pieces or just like this really messy stuff. And so we really limit our capacity for understanding and moving through it when we are in denial and not willing to express and share and go through like where it's really painful.
Yes. Right. And I was just thinking about how these areas, which I think, one of the reasons that we avoid them is one of the reasons I've avoided them is I'm afraid I'll be rejected, basically, if I talk about my struggles. But they can also be incredible entryways to deeper connection, more satisfying connection and intimacy. And that when we like exile parts of ourselves from connection, absolutely connection with others and with ourselves is limited, because there's parts of ourselves we're just totally fragmenting away.
Yeah, totally. And I think you and I both have talked about too how we want to protect others from our mess for the safety of not being judged. So having other people's thoughts be projected onto us that are negative. But also another big one for me is I don't want anyone to have to be burdened by me. Like that's a big thing for me is when I'm going through it, I'm afraid to reach out and be truthful because I feel that it will be a burden and I will be, and then in that way, unlovable by the people around me. They'll be turned off by that. They'll want to not participate too. So like part of it is feeling judged in the mess. And then a part of it for me too, which I think a lot of people can resonate with is like, no, I can handle this. I can take care of this. Everyone will be much happier if I can keep a smiley face and just pretend all is well.
Yes, totally. And I was just thinking about the distinction. Like, I think some people do see it as a burden because they feel this pressure, this internalized pressure to like, oh, if somebody brings them a mess is bad or wrong, happiness, it's like this value system of happiness is right and struggle is wrong. So, and then they can have this internalized pressure.
Well, and I think,
I have to change them.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, what a gift this person is giving me in their truthfulness. Now in our relationship, we can have more of that, more whole sharing, which Absolutely. Is something so beautiful that it can be. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that you and I, we've talked so much about like we've talked on like such a friendship level of just like sharing each other's woes, but we've noticed how important it is to be truthful. And I think for us, do you mind? I was going to ask, how old are you? Because how old are you?
How old do you think I am? No, I'm 33.
Okay, so I'm 34. I knew we were both in our early 30s. So we've been through like such huge transformations in our 30s, which is a time frame that I felt like so much of what I was having to go through, I should have done early in my 20s, or even maybe even earlier than that. And so here we've both transitioned in our 30s through so much, and in the process have had such excruciating experiences at times that were messy and like confusing and not put together, but they were in pursuit of something that was both unique to each of us, you being your path of poetry and so many other things, but I know that's like a predominant one. And for me, it was just stepping out of, well, I'll just go into that story for a second real quick, because I think that's really like relevant. I graduated from high school, kind of jumped around to a few different countries, did different things, and then finally was like, I need to get a career. I need to go to school. I need to like do that thing. That's what sounds safe and is important and will make me a decent human being. So I got a job as a dental hygienist, and for 6 years was like really quite successful, from even being like a leader in my state association and doing all the different jobs. But like there was this like low grade, like kind of hatred for it in so many ways. I enjoyed a lot of it, and there's parts of it I still miss, but I had birthed that career path out of like necessity and fitting into a certain role and security. And so all the while during my 6 years of practicing, I was trying to find something that was soul fulfilling and that actually I would enjoy. And I didn't even quite have that understanding that like I didn't like hygiene, so I needed something else. It was just that like, I don't know, I just wasn't fulfilled. And I was feeling stuck and like I needed to do something else. So I started doing these different like trainings, or like I always knew I wanted it to be kind of like a metaphysical, like maybe like spiritual healing or physical healing of some kind that, was not in the really mainstream medical field. And I went to this training for a spiritual type healing. And I was living in Maui at the time. And I flew to Big Island for what was going to be like a week-long training. And this is when I was still a full-on dental hygienist. So I am just like trying out all the stuff, like just exploring all these things. And I'd had like a month or two of like a lot of excitement about this training. And I flew to this training. I rented a car. I'm staying with a friend. And after the first day, I just knew it wasn't for me. Like it just, nothing about it resonated. And here I was having spent like quite a bit of money. I had taken off time from work. And I had to just admit that like it was a dead end. And so I went there the next day and I told the woman because I wanted to tell her in person and I was like, I'm so sorry. But of course she tried to talk me into staying and I was like, no, I'm so clear that this isn't for me. And it still felt so messy and it was like kind of embarrassing. And I felt a bit of shame about having like talked it up, not just like to myself, but like the people around me, and everyone knew I was going to go do this training for a week. And then I like walked away halfway through it, but I didn't stop looking for my thing either. And now, of course, I haven't practiced dental hygiene at all this year, and very, very little even in the last 2 years. So I've completely transitioned my life into what I was searching for, which was really a soul-based life. And it was so messy. I don't know. Did that story resonate? Does that?
Just like the breakdown of these like forms and constructs, like on our way to the new, well, it reminds me like how the caterpillar in the cocoon like eats itself and becomes a pile of goo before it transforms. Like so often the destructive process before we get to the other side, it's just, it's messy and ambiguous and unclear and complicated. And yeah, that's what I took from it. Did that feel right?
Yeah, totally. And I look back at the me that like just felt so discouraged that day that I flew home early, and I was just had I had the insight to know that I would end up finally figuring it out, like that day wouldn't have been so difficult, but I really didn't even know then. And but yet I was willing to go through the mess and the like potential discomfort and the potential what I would have called failure, like I was willing to go through all of that. And in my 30s, well, late 20s, right, I guess then, and that'd be okay, that like I hadn't figured it out. And I had to kind of start over at a time in my life when I really wanted to just be like figuring it out and be solid.
Wow. And yeah, and I guess I also hear like, if you had forced yourself into this belief that I'm supposed to have figured it out, that's the only thing that's okay, and not allow, like you would have just miserably stayed the course.
Yeah, which I
allowed
did.
Yourself. Yeah.
Which I did for so many years of just thinking like, right, I should just, I should keep this clean and tidy. Wow. Yeah. Totally.
Thanks for that story. I'd love to share a personal thing too.
Okay,
about
please do.
Yeah, cool. So, well, I was just thinking about how like growing up with the idea for various reasons that just, the mess needed to be repressed the mess. I found myself like professionally kind of like positioning myself in places like as a healer, as a hypnotherapist, where, and then as a mystical poet, where I thought I felt somewhat imprisoned in these roles because I thought, oh, as a healer, I'm not allowed to bring any of my own mess in. Like I'm just there for the other person, and for them to trust me, I need to seem like I really have my stuff together and pretend. If I don't, I need to pretend, or else I'll be like, my work will not be valid. And then also and that was a big journey, but then I like found myself again, I'm like a mystical poet writing about inherent essential light. And then and then some days I'm just feeling so messy, or I've just like had a big fight with my husband. And then I write this like inspired poem, and I was just like, oh, like feeling like I was kind of in some ways stuck in these beautiful prisons that I had made for myself, like these roles. And so it's been an interesting journey of validating, like, no matter no matter what role we're in, if we're a spiritual teacher, even if we're a mystical poet, if we're a healer, whatever we are, if we're a coach like you, like we're people too. And being a person, mess is part of it. And we just need to really bring that in. And also like creating a new, and I love that we're here today advocating for this, like creating a new paradigm where leadership can include vulnerability. And I had 3 of my really like powerfully impactful experiences of realizing that were these times when facilitators or leaders in some way opened with sharing about their struggles. And like, it was the most beautiful experience of leadership I'd ever experienced or witnessed. And so, you know, and my clients probably would have felt better rapport with me if I'd shared, you know, if I'd let them in a little bit into what was going on with me. And certainly like my posts on Facebook, when I've been willing to experiment with showing more of the struggle, like those are the posts that get the most attention and the most love. So it doesn't have to be either or, like there's no like healed, unhealed binary. We're just these processes that like we have to keep moving through the mess to learn about, have more and more self-understanding and compassion. And anyway.
Well, yeah. And I think that, well, looking at the success you've had over the last year and a half, a lot of people that would show up right now and maybe look at your body of work wouldn't understand. Like, it's so hard when you see someone at a certain point where like you've had 2 successful books published, and so it's hard for people to know that like only a year and a half ago that wasn't the case, and that there's been so much mess on the way. Like, and of course, like I can relate too, but yours is so, for people, they just see this like, oh, Chelan's the poet. Yes, she's been super successful. You know, it's hard for, we want to put these people that we put these people on a pedestal and don't realize that they've just been going through it too. Like they're humans, very much so, dealing with the same self-beliefs of doubt and all this stuff that I feel like is important, especially now that you and I are on the other side of that, and we're like, oh, we get what it was all for. Like this mess was so important. If we had resisted it, we wouldn't be here.
100%. Yeah. And yeah, right. And it was in resisting the mess that like all my progress and all my growth was stalled. And it was in finally being willing to embrace and work with and be open about the mess that transformation of all kinds was able to happen, and things were finally able to get in progress into movement, forward movement and such.
Okay. And I feel like that's the lesson right there, right? Like you had the potential for all of this for so long. And then once it was embraced, that's when the movement actually took place. That's where these huge transformations came from, was like willing to go there and like do all the uncomfortable, messy things.
Yes. And huge props and thanks to you for being on that journey too, because just, I felt so much support from you and so much just resilience, knowing that I was side by side with someone who was also going through a process of your own like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's very
These are new frontiers. These are new frontiers for many of us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this is what, I mean, I'm so lucky that it's so interesting how my job is to help people do, like, the process of me discovering my soul desire was to now help other people do that. Like, it's so fascinating that that was the role that I stepped into. And I'm like, oh, my soul desire is helping other people discover their soul desires. That's so fascinating. So like, I help other people do that. But of course, most of them aren't ending up as a coach or someone leading. They're doing all these other cool things. So it is a really fascinating thing to have gone through that. And now that's my job, helping people do just that.
Yes. So Justin, is a soul desired coach that helps you discover and clarify and really be able to actually move forward with these things. And I don't know that she was just the perfect ingredient for me when I was in my process with publishing my poetry.
Yeah. Which is so cool.
And then, and we'll talk about this more down the road. So many of our themes intersect, but there's this myth that like when we pursue our dreams, you know, that it's like dancing down a rainbow path and it's all like easy and smooth. And that's such a limiting myth. Because it's in some ways it's the most like meaningful, but also the messiest thing that there is. Because the reason that we don't pursue it is because we're afraid of all these feelings. And yeah, and I like to share that, like, really this process of discovering that I needed to publish my book, it actually began with being accountable for my anger and like feeling into the layers beneath that, the messy layers, and being willing to encounter those and move through those and just like have this major emotional purge experience through accepting the mess. And then within that, all these other parts were clarified that had been buried inside of me, along with all this repressed energy that was too messy to be shown.
Okay, wait, but you have to explain that more, because I think I understand a little bit about the concept of like diving into your anger, but that's what do you mean?
I might have just opened up a can of worms, like, because I think we should probably end this podcast soon. One of our challenges is, again, we have just so much material and so many different tracks, all of which are so interesting and appealing to go down. But I think we should try to end it at 1:30.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we have just a few minutes. So then what we're gonna do is maybe Chelan's, we're talking about anger in our third one. So we're just gonna let that story show up there.
Yeah. And we're talking about big dreams down the road too. So this is the to be continued theme, but I promise that we'll clarify and it'll make full sense at some point.
Yeah, good. I think that'll be so helpful.
Is there anything we should really touch on to close, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I just had one more thought about all this, is that like I want to just kind of normalize the fact that a lot of us weren't given the opportunity to go through this mess as children, when we maybe could have done a lot of the experimenting and self-discovery and like been curious about our world the way that a child naturally is. So, you know, you and I have talked about how this messiness can feel very childlike and feel like really inappropriate, when like actually, yeah, I mean, it would have been great if we could have done this when we were young, but a lot of our lives were very dictated by the elders around us, by our adult caregivers. So this is a messy, kind of childlike, chaotic thing to go through. And I just really want to normalize that for everyone who feels like confused and lost and like weirdly out of alignment with the age that they feel.
Oh, that is so valuable what you just said. Really. I think that's one of the biggest limiting judgments and obstacles, is this idea that we're going to be childish if we go into this stuff. And working as a hypnotherapist, I've learned that like almost all of our wounds come from like between the ages of 0 to 6, when we're just absorbing our world. And then those things crystallize and kind of lock down in us as our familiar patterns. So there's almost no way around going into these places, but it's not childish to do that. It's actually just being a really mature adult, finally tending to these unmet needs as a child. And we really do carry these wounds from childhood into our adult life. And that's just universal. There's nothing weird or abnormal about that. It's just how it goes. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So I have one little tidbit of advice for everyone, and then I'm done. So my tidbit is if people are pursuing things, to allow awareness of whether, when they maybe have a hesitation, if the hesitation comes from just general disinterest, like they're no longer interested in it, like they're just kind of over what they're like, it's like, oh, okay, tried it, done. Or if the hesitation to proceed is out of fear of the mess and the discomfort. Because if you can identify that, choosing to keep pursuing the thing that you want and push through the mess and welcome the fear and like continue going through it, you will get to the other side. And to not see that as like a block that should redirect you, but that you will actually, on your path of like self-discovery and the things that your soul wants, you will come to these moments when it is scary and messy. And if it really is what you want, pursue it. So yeah, that's my final just little share for anyone, because I think it's important to notice that, yeah, sometimes we just are no longer interested, but sometimes we get off track because we're so afraid of these things, and to identify which one's actually going on is really powerful.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me also, just like finding those safe places, which they exist, where you can just share those things that feel like these, big shames or insecurities or obstacles, and have them just be honored and normalized, and to be thanked for sharing them. And then, those places, it's so helpful to know, oh, that it's not necessarily a liability to myself in connection or in forward movement. And it actually just makes me larger as a person to like bring this part of me in, because we're never alone in these things. And so then we have more, access to self, and more compassion for others. And we're just a better, wiser resource in whatever path we're pursuing.
Yeah.
When essentially we're not as scared of ourselves, and like resisting and rejecting ourselves, we become more whole and wonderful.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Justin. This was wonderful and fun.
It was
Thank
wonderful
you.
and fun. It was.
It was.
We talked about okay, really quick. So Chelan's got 2 books. Tell us about your books really fast.
Yeah, let's promote ourselves a little bit. So my books are called Susceptible to Light and Let Us Dance the Stumble and Whirl with the Beloved. I have to show them to you real quickly because they're so pretty, and they're right here. And
grab my copies too.
So here they are. Aren't they pretty? My favorite 2 authors, amazingly, mystically, wildly, wrote the forewords for both of my books. And yeah, Wild Town. And yep, and all of the poems in here are just really just inspired. They come through in about 2 minutes, and I write them down exactly as they come through, and it's a really it's the most beautiful like process and experience in my life. You can get these on Amazon.
Perfect.
Yep. And I'm also available as a speaker, and I love to present and to interview. So just wanted to put that out there, and to collaborate with people. So don't hesitate to reach out. Don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, same. I'm open to anyone reaching out. I work primarily with people one-on-one in like an intimate coaching situation. I also am now starting to do in-person workshops too, which is really, really fun. And yeah, so it's so funny hearing Chelan say it. She's open to interviews and speaking, and I'm like, yeah, me
too. You're ready, Justin, for that.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, so
she has
fun.
so much wisdom to share. You have a really beautiful, expressive flow. You're a beautiful speaker. You really are.
Well, I mean, that means a lot coming from a poet. So,
okay,
so
come at us with the great opportunities world, and we will really consider them.
Yeah, let's invite that in for sure. Okay, I'm gonna leave like our websites and contacts and all of that in like show notes or wherever they pop up. Just so everyone knows, we do plan on making this a podcast that's available for everyone through those different avenues, and then also just YouTube. But
yes,
cool.
And share this widely if it feels genuine to you. Yeah. And yeah, tell your people about it. And then just to remind you about our next episode, this is a working title, but on some level it's going to be exploring what is love, normalizing the disgust, hatred, insecurity, shames, etc., that often show up on the path toward true intimacy of the heart.
Great.
Love it. I can't wait. Can't wait. Thank you, Justin.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. See ya.
Bye.